This is our fire series, and this is going to be a little talk on friction fires. And friction fires are the hardest fires to do, but we teach those because if you're in a survival situation and you have nothing, the friction fires are probably the ones you'll be able to find the materials to go ahead and make. There are all kinds of friction fires, and I'm from Michigan, and in Michigan the Indians primarily use the bow drill, and so we're going to key on that on the end and go ahead and demonstrate that. But there are other kinds as well. You got the hand drills. They have a small board. You're going to have a stick, and you want that stick to be about elbow to fingertips, like this. We're going to have you zoom in on this. You're going to want one that has a pith on the inside, okay, whenever you do a hand drill. And so that pith on the inside there is what you're looking for. And then as he zooms back out here, what you're going to do is you're going to spin this with your hand, and this is exaggerated, but that's basically what you're doing right there, is making a V out of your hand, and then you're drilling into this. Your fireboard's going to be thin, not near as thick as what a bow drill fire is. And we'll show you a notch here in a little bit, and then you'll cut your notch and you get it burned in. And this is a hand drill. Hand drills work, but they really were only used in the areas where it was really dry. And when it's dry, then these coals, you can get them to go. Not that you can't get a hand drill going here in Michigan, but it's really a whole lot difficult. Today we got 70% humidity, and that happens a lot around here. In high humidity areas, the hand drill, it's just you're going to really fight it to even try and get a fire out of it. As a matter of fact, a lot of these different ones that you can do, you end up having troubles with humidity. Even in the bow drill fire, where you can really put some pressure, you get a lot of good stuff there, a lot of good heat. If it's high humidity, you can still have troubles with that. So hand drill is one technique that can be done, and that's one of the more familiar ones. We have a plow fire, which is, if you watch the movie Castaway, Tom Hanks there, he ended up doing a plow fire, making fire that way. And what we do here is we got a cedar stick here, and I took a crack and I cut a V in it. Now they want this slot to be about 5 inches, and then you get it so that you can actually hold it underneath your armpit, put it down, you get a wedge here, you set something in here and have your tinder there, and then you end up doing a plow like this, and you get smoke, and then you can get a coal to build up in there, and then you can finally make fire with that. So this is a plow fire. That works too. Again, it's really hard with humid areas. We also have people today will talk about these pump drills. This is a pump drill here, and I basically made this one out of all Mother Nature's stuff, all the cordage and stuff. We have a cordage series that you can go over. You can learn how to actually make cordage from stuff off Mother Nature. This is cattail leaf here. This here is a daylily leaf. Along with this, we can make different sizes. You'll see that over there in that section. Pump drills, people use them today to actually make fire, but you end up lining them up like this, and then this one's too stiff in there. This counterweight will roll it back up. And most of the time the Indians will use these for tools to drill with. And they used to drill all the holes with a pump drill. But today some people actually use them to make a fire. And you can do that, this end here has got too short. This should be longer. And so pump drills work as well. We have another kind of fire called a saw fire. That basically was done in areas where they have bamboo. And I'm going to go ahead and include a video of the FrictionFire because I can't do it here because I'm in Michigan, we don't have bamboo. But FrictionFires are, use a bamboo, you cut a slot out, you take one of the edges, you sharpen it, and then you take another piece of bamboo, make a slot, you get two pieces of tinder on both sides, you hold that down, and you rub it on there, and you can see this guy that does this does a very good job. Okay, I want to talk about a bow drill here. In Michigan, that's what the Indians use the most with the bow drill because you can get a lot more heat out of it than you can these other kinds. And I want to talk about different pieces we got. Of course, in a bow drill, you got a bow, and I have actually made bow and cordage and everything out of Mother Nature's stuff and gotten fire with it just to make sure that I could do it. If you're just going to practice bow drills, which takes a lot of practice in order to learn how to do a bow drill, there's a lot of little pieces that if they're not just right, you won't get fire, and so it takes a lot of practice. So on a bow drill, what I do is this cordage here, you can use your regular clothesline rope and stuff, and you'll get a couple fires and then it'll break. But if you go down to a small engine shop, tell them you want a length of starter cord. That's what this is, the starter cord for a small engine shop. And this works pretty good. I've had this on here for a couple of years already, several years. And it's still just starting to get frayed, and it'll hang in there for a long time. So you need a bow, and then you need a drill or a spindle. And the spindle, you're going to end up having two ends on this thing. You're going to have a fire end, which this one is. And then you're going to have another end that's going to be in the handhold. And that end you do not want friction on it. And so what I do is I'll end up using different stuff. If I was in a survival situation, I'd use leaf or mushroom or something that's wet and moist to lubricate that so that I didn't have the friction on this end. And the handhold, you can go ahead and use a piece of wood and burn it in. I'm going to use, this is right here is a hip socket from a deer, and I'm going to use that for my handhold, and that works pretty good for a handhold. And in this little hip socket here. And then I usually try and do something to make a glaze on that. And a lot of times what I found, if I use liquid hand soap, put some in here and on that, and start using that, it'll go ahead and glaze over like that. When it glazes over like that, it works really well. A lot less friction on this. And so then I mark that in because you'll never get fire on that unless you totally cut it all off and start again, then you could. But right now there's no way you get fire on that end, and so I usually mark that with a little notch. And so then you got a handhold, a drill or a spindle, a bow, and then the fireboard. Now on your fireboard, what you're going to end up doing when you start, you got to start by burning in a socket. And the way I do that is I take my spindle, whatever size it is, and you don't want your spindle right next to the edge. You want it back up a little bit. This one I got a little too close. And so I lay it on here to where I got, that much or so of distance left. And then I take my knife and I go ahead and bore a little hole in here. And then I kind of sharpen that a little bit. And then you're actually going to do the same thing that I'll do when we make a fire. And you'll burn that in a bit. And then what you have to do is cut a notch. I'm going to let you zoom in on this here a minute, get a closer look. You want that notch to be just short of that bottom dimple. And then that holds your spindle, your drill there. But if you get it too close, then it doesn't hold so well. And then you want to make a notch in here by cutting it in there. And what's going to happen is when you spin this, it's going to make heat. And a lot of times when I do this, I'll start it out and I'll just kind of go slow and just hold it there and warm the socket up, because what we have to do, we have to get this up to 650 degrees, and that's where the dust, the hot dust, will actually start to smolder, 650 degrees. So that basically, that's what we're going to do, is we're going to, you talk about rubbing two sticks together. Well, you end up rubbing these together till we can get that up to 650 degrees. And then I'm putting a lot of pressure on it when I do that. When I do that, it'll end up pulling dust off both of these. And that dust, if you got your notch correct, will go ahead and collect in the notch. And what it'll do is then make a coal. Now, a lot of guys will take their coal as soon as they get it, and they'll pull their fireboard away, and they do two different ways. They'll build it on something, and then they'll dump it into their tinder. When I first started this, there was several times I ended up breaking my coal. When I broke my coal, it fell open. Well, we talked about heat is something you need in order to have fire. Well, when the coal fell open, it got all the cold air come in there, and it died. It lost all of its heat, and I had to start all over again. So one of the things I do is I end up building my coal in the notch right on top of my tinder. And that way I don't have the chance of dumping it into my tinder and breaking it. Another thing I do is I don't take it out of the notch until I lightly blow on it until we see the red show up. Once that red starts to show up, then I'll go ahead and pull my fireboard away, roll it in, and then blow it into a flame if we can get it to go. So there are two reasons why I leave it in the notch. One is this notch is already hot. If I'm in really cold air, I've seen the guys on TV fail, and this is one of the reasons why they failed, because they took it out of their notch too soon, and it was not only cold, but it was very humid. And so what happened is that cold air rushes into the coal, and when it rushes into the coal, it takes the heat away, and then it draws in this moisture with it, and those two things right there is what stop those guys from getting fired. So I leave it in my notch because it protects it. It's already hot, so it keeps my coal warm, and then it also stops the air from the moist air from rushing in there and the cold air from rushing in there. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set up here, and we'll go ahead and see if we can make a bow drill fire here, or get fire out from a bow drill from spinning it, rubbing two sticks together like they always talk about. And the process again is we'll end up putting it in, and we'll spin it. We'll try and build a coal in here, and when I do that, I'm just going to have some pressure on it to begin with, get that socket warm. Then I'm going to bear down even harder. Now you're not going to be able to see a difference when I do that, but I'll tell you how I do it. And mainly what we'll see is it probably starts smoking more. And when I put more pressure on, that'll go ahead and peel off more dust. So we'll go ahead and get set up here, and we'll see if we can get a bow drill fire going. Okay, we're going to see if we can do a bow drill fire here. And here's what I was talking about. I actually put my tinder underneath. You're going to want to separate it. It's really humid. We have 70% humidity here today. So this is going to be one of those times that's going to be harder than the other times. So I'm also using something as a barrier between the ground, because we had a lot of rain. And this ground is really moist. If I put my tinder right on it, it'll suck that moisture right up in the tinder, and it's almost nil then to getting the fire going. So what I want to do is show you, when you load these, you want to spin these in, and what I want you to see is that the spindle is on the outside of the string. I could load it the other way, and if you do that, it ends up rubbing on the bow itself, and you have a lot more friction than what you want. The friction you want is right there. You don't want any other friction. Any other friction just makes this even harder, and there's a lot of work to this. When you learn how, you end up sweating and stuff. And so the friction you want is right there. And one of the things I do is on this end, if you have it totally flat, you get a lot more heat. And if you have a higher or a greater angle on this, then it'll drill more. So if you drill more, you get a lot less heat. And so what you want to do is try and find the optimum angle so that you don't drill too much, but you also have heat. And if you had it all the way flat, what will happen is it won't stay put. It'll track off and stuff. You'll end up wandering away from your notch, and then your coal that you're trying to build will build up around the outside edge, and it won't work. So there's an actual threshold there, and I find about 15 to 30 degrees is a good little angle to do these on, and about like that. And so that's one of the things you're going to be looking for as well. When I do this, my arm is, even though I got a pretty good sized arm, it is not strong enough to hold this. And so what I end up doing is I end up using my knee. And I'm going to put my foot on here like this, and I end up using my knee and my arm to hold this thing in place, because there's a lot of pressure on this drill. And so what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and see if we can get a coal built, and we're going to leave it in the socket until we actually see red. If we get that point, we'll go ahead and pull it out of there, and we'll see if we can blow it into a flame. Now my tinder's sucking up moisture from the air. We'll see what we can do though. And okay. Alright, now at first I'm just going to hold it here. I'm going to warm that socket up. And now I'm going to start bearing down. Got some smoke started. Long strokes. Okay, I think I might have a coal. There's the red. Now we're going to take it out of here gently. And here we got fire from Friction. There's a bow drill fire there. That was really tough. You'll notice I almost lost that coal. Even though it was in the socket, the humidity here was really trying to put that thing out. And so when you do these, just go ahead and try that trick, because it just helps you out. Leave it in the notch until it actually shows up red. And then you'll have a lot more success than running into those other troubles. There's so many things that can make this go wrong. Just that little bit will help you so much more. So there's a fire by Friction.